superstars.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Corner Guys Boxing Podcast. This is your host, Thomas Trembox, along, as always, with Timothy Rivera.
What's good, Thomas?
Not much. We got a little bit of boxing action this weekend after really not having much last weekend. We also have two special guests on for this show, which we'll get to in a moment. Just to give everyone a quick rundown, the fight, so not really going to be talking too much about. Brandon Figueroa goes against Javier Chacon on FS1. That's on Saturday at 10 p.m. I don't know if anyone's seen the flyer for the fight, but Brandon Figueroa looks like a kid that's trying to fight his alcoholic stepfather. That's the way the poster looks. If no one's seen it, I don't know if you've seen it yet, Tim, but if anyone gets a chance, take a look at it. It's pretty funny. Figueroa looks like he's about 17, 16, and Chacon looks like a 48-year-old stepdad that's an alcoholic, and that's why they're fighting. Also, Juan Francisco Estrada, I like him as a fighter, great fighter, in my top 10 pound for pound. He's fighting Dwayne Beeman on DAZN Network's 7 p.m. start time for the WBC Super Flyweight title. I love Estrada. I don't love the opponent. Beeman has no business being in the ring with him, so we're not going to really dive too much into those two fights. But what we will dive into is the interesting WBO light heavyweight title fight between Sergey Kovalev and Anthony Yarde. The odds are really shrinking. It's getting closer and closer to a 50-50 fight. What's your take on the fight, Tim?
You know, Anthony Yarde is a huge motherfucker. I don't know if you've seen this dude at the weigh-in, but he is a huge 175-pounder. I find it interesting. I find it an interesting battle of a guy who really has no experience against a guy who has experience, but I think Yarde's team is hoping that he is aged out. How I see this fight going, honestly, is you know, when you start a new job, no matter if you have experience with that job field or not, you're going to be nervous. And I believe Yarde is going to be nervous. I believe that he's going to be in Russia. The fight is perfectly tailored for Kovalev to win. The only thing is, you know, of course I want to talk about the betting aspect with you because I think the betting aspect is absolutely fascinating for this fight. The only question is Yarde's chin going to be good enough to last 12 rounds with Sergey Kovalev? I don't know how the odds are right now, but I'll let you speak a little bit about that.
Well, right now, let me actually get up the newest odds. Kovalev opened up as not a huge favorite, but a decent-sized favorite. But the late money, has been coming in on Yarde. Right now, they have the odds. Kovalev is only negative 157, and Yarde is plus 142. And this is considering that, you know, Kovalev opened up, I think, over 300. So the money is definitely coming in on Yarde. You know, fight-wise, like you said, it's hard to see Yarde being prepared for who he's fought and, you know, fighting overseas. Kovalev isn't the same fighter he was, but even Kovalev at 50% should be able to beat Yarde, who really, when you look at it, everyone he's faced is pretty much, when is Yarde going to stop him? That's basically who his opponents have been. There hasn't been any, you know, put back as far as what he's receiving. You know, these guys, a lot of them were just looking to survive or just get hit and then not decide to fight anymore. It's hard to see him going into Kovalev's backyard. And unless he catches Kovalev early, which is my only thinking, is that if Yarde's going to win this, it's got to be within the first 5 rounds. Because usually also when you have a muscle mass body build like that, it's usually not good for endurance a lot of the times, as we've seen in the past with certain fighters. Berto springs to mind some fights he ran to gas. Even the Joshua fight against Ruiz, bulky build. kind of faded in the fight. Also, I mean, he did get hit as well, but, stamina-wise, even the Klitschko fight, he took a lot of those rounds off till he got that second win late in the fight. So a lot of times muscular builds don't really do too well. But if you're looking for a betting aspect, the over and under for this fight I'm looking at is 8.5 rounds right now. And it's at -120 both ways. I'd be tempted to take the under, figuring this fight a lot of things have to happen for this fight to go to the middle of the 9th round. And that includes Yarde's chin being good, Kovalev not really being over the hill as some people think he is, which I don't, but some people think that he is. Does Yarde have the endurance and stamina to go that long? So I think the under is a pretty decent bet right now, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you a question, Thomas, because I'm very curious about this. This is a fascinating thing to me. If Kovalev is a logical winner, which I believe that I and you see him as the one who's going to be the victor on Saturday night, why is the money swaying towards Yarde?
I don't know. It's a tough one to explain. Maybe they're looking at Kovalev's age and Yarde being, the good guy to watch on videos and Instagram and Twitter and, him hitting the pads and things like that. And just the size and the youth advantage of Yarde. But also one way to look at it, betting sites or Vegas or whoever you want to say, they don't stay in business by people winning. So with everyone betting on Yarde, there's a good shot that Kovalev, in my mind, wins just for the fact that, Vegas doesn't stay in business by losing money. All the money that's coming in Yarde, unless there's something that everyone knows about Kovalev that we don't, maybe he's sitting there drinking late at night. But, how would other people know that but not us who follow the sport? So unless there's some type of information of Kovalev that I'm missing, I think people just going with Yarde's youth advantage and just his physical massive size and, the video clips they see on Instagram or Twitter or things like that where he's hitting the pads or, hitting a sparring partner to the body and he looks really good. But, again, pad work can be really, really deceptive for the most part. And looking at Yarde's resume, he's had 2 fights that went the 7th round, and neither of those were competitive. So how is he going to react in a fight that is competitive? Because obviously one-sided action, you go farther in the fight. With the 2 fights that went 7 rounds for him, that changes if those guys are competitive and they're fighting back. For 2 instances, one, either they could get stopped earlier, or 2, Moore's going to get taken out of Yarde where, a 7-round fight where he wins by TKO, can easily drain him where when that 7th round comes, he doesn't have that same stamina anymore because he's getting hit. He's having to be defensive, etc. So it's really an interesting fight for the fact that I can make a reason why I could see both guys winning. I can see that if Kovalev really is below 50%, I mean, I think he's 37, 38 now, something 36. Yeah, so, he didn't look good in the second Ward fight. But at the same time, we heard training rumors of issues, and it is Andre Ward. And he didn't look too spectacular in those 2 fights after that. The Alvarez fight, I thought he looked pretty good in, and so he got caught, and then he hooked up with Buddy McGirt, and he actually showed that he was a competent boxer in the second Alvarez fight. So I think that extra facet of Kovalev's game where he doesn't have to be the come-forward headhunter all the time, he can actually box and move, is really going to be a good advantage for him in this fight with Yarde. It just seems like if he can actually box and move and put up resistance, I think he'll be a little bit perplexed. At least that's my thinking. It's hard to say because we haven't seen him in that situation yet.
I will just say that, and I think we alluded to this before, it is extremely hard to pick a fighter who just does not have the experience to warrant this kind of a fight. And Yarde just does not have this experience. A lot of the people that he fought have low KO percentages. A lot of people he's fought are C-level fighters.
I'd say even below C.
Yeah. There's, I don't know if this is true. I hope it's a parody and a satire, but his coach said that they're not doing any sparring for this fight, which I really hope is not true. So it's just one of these things. Like, Kovalev has all the experience. He honestly, in the first fight with Ward, I thought he won the fight, and Ward is a beast, and Alvarez is also a beast. So you're talking about a man who has been around, outboxed some really, really, really good fighters. There's no reason or logical reason that anyone can give me that can say that Yarde has the experience to win this fight.
You got to figure Yarde has 18 fights as a pro. Out of his first 10 opponents, 9 of them have losing records or below 500 records. That kind of shows you everything you need to know. I know a lot of fighters' careers work up that way, but when you look at the next 8 fights, a lot of these guys are kind of like, well, who are these guys? And granted, I know maybe more UK listeners would maybe be more familiar with some of these guys, but a couple of names are familiar. But overall, I mean, most of those guys in the next 8, I'm not even sure who half of them are. So the only hope I would think Yarde has is, again, Kovalev has aged. Kovalev really never takes it to the body too well. And he has shown that he can be hit and stopped as the Alvarez fight. So if Yarde, I mean, I would think if I was him, I would just rush him and try to put the pressure on the first 4 or 5 rounds, because that's really his only hope, in my opinion. If he can't get Kovalev's respect or land something within the first 4 rounds that could, make Kovalev in the back of his mind kind of go back to the Ward fight or the first Alvarez fight, and it's a smooth sailing for Kovalev in the first few rounds, it's only, when does Kovalev stop him, or does he just elect to box for an easy UD? But it's definitely an interesting fight. I believe it's 12:30 on ESPN. I don't know if they're showing any of the undercard, but there's actually a really good undercard fight between Alexei Papin and Makuba. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, for the WBC Silver Cruiserweight title. That's an actually pretty good cruiserweight fight as well. I'm not sure if they're going to show it or not, but the Kovalev Yarde, it's definitely an interesting fight. It just seems that Kovalev wins. You're going to see Canelo theoretically against Kovalev sometime, maybe November, December. So that's another interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Well, I have 2 more things to say about this. Well, one is a question for you, and then the other one is a general statement. I think if you have a resume like Yarde does, you have to have an X factor. Deontay Wilder had an absolutely horrendous resume when he fought Stavern for the title, but he had that X factor. He had that power. If Yarde's power is as good as his record is, then maybe we'll have a surprise. And also, my question to you in regards to Canelo is, if Yarde wins this fight, does Canelo fight Yarde?
No.
So you think it has to be Kovalev or bust?
Yeah, Kovalev has the name, and I think Canelo's camp sees something Kovalev that they know they can exploit. As far as Yarde, if he is the real deal and comes on, let's say stops Kovalev in 3 rounds, Canelo's not going anywhere near him. For the risk-reward factor, people still aren't ultimately familiar with Yarde outside of, big boxing fans and people in the UK, and also the fact that he's a huge 175-pounder. That's really asking a lot for Canelo to take on somebody that size. I think if Yarde wins, then you're going to see maybe Andrade or I really can't even say anymore because I don't know what Canelo's even planning or doing anymore at this stage of the game.
Maybe we'll see a Pascal versus Yarde.
Why not? Why not? But speaking of the Yarde Kovalev fight, one of our special guests actually has his take on the fight, and also he has some input on the upcoming fight card on February 23rd, where he has a fighter in the main event, Joe Quiambao. He's a well-known matchmaker throughout New York and all of boxing, and Joe can fill you in and tell you a little bit about himself.
My name is Joe Quiambao. I'm the Director of Operations at Split Team Management, former of Bella Entertainment, the matchmaker for over 10 years. But before I even go that, I was one of New York's better amateurs in the early 90s. I first started actually in Lost Battalion Hall Boxing in Rego Park, Queens. Over there where I trained with Michael Bent, former heavyweight champion. He was just a aspiring amateur training for the 88 Olympics. Over there was quite a few. They had quite the alumni in boxing and training. They had Lionel Oldham, who's a 6-time Golden Glove champion. They have Hollywood Eno, who's a celebrity trainer who among his clients is Drake, Kevin Hart, Carmelo Anthony, among others. Then after that, I went to Gleason's Gym in early 90s. Over there at a time I was there, you had budding superstars, guys that didn't make noise, but they were about to, like Kevin Kelly, who eventually became a featherweight champion, Regilio Tour, who was an Olympian and became a WBO world champion, Junior Jones, who was just a contender at the time, Arturo Gatti, who's just a prospect. The Acevedo brothers, I don't know if you remember them from the Lower East Side. All three of them, they made history because all three of those brothers, Georgie, Danny, and Nicky, they won the Golden Gloves in the same year, and all in the opening class. So that's something for the Acevedo family trophy. And who was the other one? There was just the list. Oh, the Judah brothers and Zab Judah. Daniel, Zab, Josiah, Ariel. Yeah, the whole. This is when we were all kids over there, and it's kind of hard to imagine. But Zab was the quiet one.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. How long were you an amateur before you competed in the Gold Gloves?
Well, I actually had my first fight in the Golden Glove in the finals because I actually bought all the way. But there was only 3 guys in my weight class. Hold on one second. There was only 3 guys. So I bought all in my first amateur fight was in Madison Square Garden, the main arena. That was the last time in 1990. And that was the last time they actually had it in the main arena. So I lost the decision to the junior Olympic champion Brian O'Shea. It was one of my, funny as you say, he's like one of my good friends in boxing right now.
Brian O'Shea. Okay.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
No. I had quite the experience as an amateur fighter because I got to, even though I lost that first fight, actually I lost my first 3 fights, and then I started, eventually getting confident and started winning. When you start winning, you get more confident and you get better. And I was able to fight in the national tournaments. I was in 91, 92 U.S. Nationals in Colorado. I was in tournaments with Oscar De La Hoya, Chris Bird. I'm trying to think who else was there. Oh, John Ruiz, Montel Griffin. Quite a few of those actually in the National Golden Gloves. At the same weight class in the same tournament as Floyd Mayweather in 93 in the National Golden Gloves in Little Rock, Arkansas. And he was, we were 106. And the way you see him now, as good as he was now, he was good back then too, yeah. So he's one of those guys that actually stood out. You just knew that he was going to be a big player in boxing.
All right.
What made you stop boxing? Because I remember you having good amateur careers, you had stated. So what made you stop boxing and want to get into more of the professional side, the behind-the-scenes aspect of the sport?
Well, it actually happened by accident because, when you get older, you're going to have to, your parents will tell you, hey, you got to do something or you got to get out the house. So eventually I went to school. I was trying to be a teacher. Gym teacher, so I went to Hunter College, and I thought I graduated. But at that time, I was a trainer at Plus One Fitness. I don't know if that company is still in existence, but it was corporate fitness at all, like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, all the different places, the corporate offices. And I went to pick up my diploma because my wife just said, just pick it up so we could put it on the wall, just for a joke. And when I went to pick it up, they told me I was a half credit short. and I was done with school. And I asked her, what could I do? Because I do not want to go to class anymore. And they said you could do an internship. So I was thinking where I could do an internship, and I was thinking all the success stories. And I remember P. Diddy saying when he worked for the way he got in the record business, the music businesses, he interned. And he said nobody's going to turn down free labor. So I'm thinking I like boxing. I need this internship. So I sent an email to my old employer, the Bell Entertainment. And next thing you know, I'm there as an intern. My first fight over there, it was good. It was a great experience. And that's all I'll say about that. And then I turned it into a job. And then we went our ways. And then I found my way into split team management. But it basically was an accident, how everything happened, how I got into the business. But when I, once I got in, I try to make the most of it.
All right, and to piggyback off that question, you being an amateur fighter and, meeting a lot of fighters, the amateur ranks, and having experience of the amateur fighting behind you, did that help you prepare as far as the matchmaking end of boxing, where maybe you could relate to fighters a little bit better?
Yes and no, because boxers always have their agenda and a matchmaker always has their agenda, and you have to meet it in the middle. There's always, you have fighters that are, ready to fight. Like, I'm trying to think who, you got your Darnell Boones who'll fight anybody and can at any given day can beat anybody. If he's in shape. Like he did against, he's beaten the Donna Stevensons and fighters like that, and quite a numerous amount of prospects. And then you got guys that are just in there for the payday. And, I'm not going to name names, but it's hard because you don't want those kind of fighters, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do to make the fight. But in answer to your question, it's pretty hard, whether you box or not, because once you make that call, they look at, a lot of times they don't see you as a former fighter. They just see you as someone trying to make a fight. And I don't blame them.
Okay.
Well, I want to know, you and me have spoke about Anthony Yarde versus Kovalev, and I know your feelings on Yarde. And a lot of his criticism is that he's faced a lot of C and D level fighters. So what is your philosophy personally on building a prospect? Should they face A level or B level before they get to someone like a Kovalev, or except if they face C level guys to go up against someone of that nature?
Here's the thing with Yarde. I mean, they marketed that guy very good. I mean, he has, people calling him the pad work champion, because he looks so impressive in the pads, and and his trainer is throwing punches, or that look to be hard. Hello?
Yeah.
Like it seems to be, he's his pad man seems to be be pretty good, but we got to see what actually happens in a real ring when he is fighting someone that could punch back, or someone that's in a C plus, B minus level. And I don't think he's fought any. Like, you look at his record, I think the only name I do recognize, Travis Reeves, who was, he has a good, I would say Yarde has a okay resume for a prospect, but as far as the number one contender, absolutely not. And we'll see what happens. I mean, everybody's thinking Kovalev is done, but if you've seen his last fight, Buddy has him moving. But I remember Buddy was telling me, like, this guy can actually box. He's hooking off his jab. He's throwing these combinations. And when that bell rang, he actually did it against Alvarez, Eater Alvarez in a rematch. And, I never seen Kovalev fight like that. And I'm sure, he's gaining confidence off that. And then plus he's fighting at home. And you got Yarde, who hasn't fought anybody. Mentally, you'll find out what kind of person Yarde is when he steps in that ring, on that way to the ring. Because, you could imagine everybody's going to be against him. faced this kind of competition. He hasn't been under this kind of pressure. So you'll see it's going to be fight or flight. I mean, from my experience, from what I see of fighters like that, they flight, they choke. But let's see what happens. I mean, if he comes out, I don't see him coming through because he doesn't have the experience in that level or experience any kind of pressure in his fights. And I just think he's gonna falter under the pressure.
So
I'm objective too. I'm not a Kovalev guy. I don't work for him. I just see him. I just see how he fights, and I see Yarde. Yarde looks like he's pretty solid, but again, he's not fighting. He's not really fighting anywhere close to top 30 competition, with the exception maybe of Reeves. But that's you can't just have one fight against someone decent.
So, in your belief, do you feel like his team feels that he reached a limit in where he's going to go, and this is just a cash-out fight?
It seemed to me, like looking from the outside in, it seems like they were matching him like this for a reason. I mean, you've been in boxing. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of ready, willing, and able light heavyweights that would have loved to fight him to see how he is, try to take a chance on him because he hasn't fought anybody. Look at like you see, he looks very impressive. You see his body, dude got muscles coming out of everywhere. You see his pad work, he looks good. But why would it be that they're matching him so soft?
No, that's true. It's very true. And they match him with a lot of guys who have low KO percentages. Which always, every time I see that, it makes me think that someone has a chin problem. Every time I see them matched up with someone with low KO percentages.
Yeah, I mean, you look at other guys from that era. Look at Tony Bellew. He actually fought some solid guys. Like, he was brought up the good. You got those other guys that actually, when they step up, they're able, they fought solid guys. I just see that. I don't see how he's gonna come through because he hasn't fought, like I said, he hasn't fought that competition, and he's fighting in Russia. That is where the fight is, no? In Russia.
Yeah, this fight is gonna be in Russia. Yeah,
you're away from home for the first time. You're like, if he comes out of this, he has to have that attitude that I got nothing to lose. But that.
What would your prediction might be?
My prediction, I think Kovalev's going to stop him.
Okay.
Yeah, what Kovalev has to do, he has to put some heat on him real early, like put some hard punches to let him know this is a whole different league. And I'm sure, you've seen Kovalev fight. He let you know, in the previous fights, he let you know he punches hard. He punches damn hard. So we'll see. And then we'll see what happens, how Yarde reacts. You'll know in the first round, the first time Kovalev throws a few punches and how Yarde reacts. You'll know what's going to happen very soon. If he fights back, then he's okay, we got to fight. If he starts flailing away, then it's only a matter of time.
Absolutely. Well, let's get to better fights. You have a couple of split T fighters that are coming up with fights. Can you tell us about that?
We have the first fight we have on this coming Friday. We have one of our he's a borderline prospect contender. We have a Abraham Nova. He's going to be defending. I forgot the name of the opponent, but he is fighting to defend his NABA title belt in Boston. He's promoted by Murphy Boxing. The boss of Murphy Boxing is Ken Casey of the Dropkick Murphys. If you're in the Boston area, you basically, or you're very familiar with the Irish community, you pretty much know the Dropkick Murphys are one of the biggest bands in the world when it comes to that community. And they do a great job throwing shows there. And if you're in the area, come see it, because there's also Also, we have another kid on the card, Brian Sabayo. You've seen his fight on the undercard of Gennady Golovkin. He fought a fellow undefeated fighter and put the performance of his life. And it was funny because we were 50-50 on should we let Brian fight his opponent, that particular opponent, and he was so adamant, like he wanted to fight. So we let him, and he just showed not only us but the world he's one of the best prospects in the country. And he fought Bakhtiar Eubov. He was 14-0-1. I believe he had who did he ever draw with?
Kareem Mayfield.
No, Jose Luis Rodriguez. He was a lot of, but he did. He has impressive wins over Nicholas Gavon.
Yeah.
Among others, he has a win over Kareem Mayfield in a close fight.
That's right. Yeah, it was a split decision. You're right. It
could have went either way, but he did.
That fight.
Who did you have? Kareem?
Yeah, I had him winning that one, but slightly close fight.
Yeah, no, but nevertheless, it's he's a prospect that's coming to win, and sometimes you got to take a chance. And Brian felt he was one of the elites, and he showed it, and he put the performance of his career in that night, and he put it in a big platform. So now he's gonna fight. I believe the kid's name is Luis Flores, who's a known durable fighter. And then I'm sure after this one, we're going to have another fight where he's going to step up and he will be displaying his skills to a world stage. And the last fight we have is DeAndre Ware. He'll be fighting on the main event on Showbox this Friday, promoted by Dmitriy Salita. We're fighting Vladimir Shishkin, who is an undefeated fighter. The best thing about DeAndre Ware, not only is he a professional boxer where he has won the WBC Continental Americas, the NABA title, he's a full-time fireman. He's a full-time job. He's a full-time boxer. He's a husband, and he has his children, a couple children. And this is something that should be more out there as opposed to the negative of boxing, because not everybody can be a world champion. Not everybody can make a living in boxing. You always have to have something where you're supporting not only yourself, but if you have a family, you can't, you got to do things to support your family and your living while you're pursuing your dream. You got a lot of guys like 4, 6, 8 round, 10 round fighters thinking, they just trying to be a full-time boxer, but you're not making that much. A lot of these guys aren't making that much where they could support themselves. You have a fighter like DeAndre who has a full-time job with benefits and everything. And then on top of that, it's his work, everybody comes together to help him make his boxing work so he can pursue his dream, which is to become a world champion. And I believe he's going to win this fight. I'm sure they're going to probably try to get him one more fight of that level, and then hopefully a world champion will give us a shot, and he can show the world what he can do is become world champion. You'll like everything you see in DeAndre when he fights because he's a man's man. He gets in, the bell rings, he goes to work. He's not one of these guys that's going to run around and play defensive. He could be defensive. He's a very aggressive fighter, but he knows how to mix in the defense. So he looks like he's there, but he's not getting hit. And he knows how to put power punches together in combinations while being very smart about it. So, Friday night should be a great night of boxing. It's in Oklahoma on Showbox.
I was wondering, as far as maybe not necessarily the Ware fight, but seeing that he is the B-side technically in this fight, but you can take any fighter that's the B-side out there that's going on the road or on some other promotion to fight. As far as bad decisions, how do you think that comes about in the sport? Is it judges that need more training? Do you think it's more I don't want to say money exchange, but something to the effect of that? And how do you think we can get the sport to where it has to be, where, you know, you don't have two judges give it to a guy that clearly lost the fight and giving him the victory just because he's the A side of the promotion?
One of the good things I liked, it was the fight was in Oklahoma. It wasn't in Detroit. Even though, you know, Toledo is not too far from Detroit, I did feel a little more comfortable. It's in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I've had fights cards over there during my earlier years, and you know they're very experienced. Occasionally you'll get some bad decisions, but more and more, majority of the time they get it right. So that was one of the things. But in answer to your question, I think you just got to look at the history of some of the judges, how they judge. Training obviously is something that should be ongoing, as opposed to just one time thing. Or I don't know, I'm not actually how they do it, but it should be an ongoing training. Like every now and then, they would have to go to some kind of seminar just to refresh what they're looking at. I think that's pretty much it. And then just see the history of who's judging who's judging. And if you're able to get the judge, like in Vegas, you know who's the proposed judge. You can decline or you can accept.
So, Split T, they have a lot of talented fighters. I want to know a fighter that hasn't been on TV yet and hasn't necessarily been in the public eye that's signed to Split T. Which fighter are you the most excited about on the roster?
That's a good question. Hold on one second. Let me go to my list here, because when I got into Split T, we only had like 8 fighters, and none of them were. They weren't like the elite, but there was a couple solid ones. Like we had Joe Williams, who's still. I would say, there's a lot. As far as prospects, we got a lot of good prospects that went underneath the table. Rolando Vargas, he's 3-0. I mean, this kid fights he's a lightweight. He's fought heavy. He's fought anybody and anybody. I just tell him he fights. He's like, he don't care who he fights. He fought an undefeated fighter in his pro debut. Second fight, he fought a fighter that was 2-1. And his last fight was on the off-TV portion of the ESPN card in Maryland, a Teofimo Lopez Nakatani undercard. He fought a 1-0 undefeated hometown fighter. And he was a southpaw. Like I said, he's a true fighter. He had a lot of amateur fights. He's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's someone to look forward to, we have a kid, Isaiah Jones. He was a national Golden Glove champion at the 165 division. He hasn't got too much press, but this guy is another one. He's basically the kid. Just tell me the date and the weight, and I'm straight. He don't care who he fights. He'll get in there with anybody. He's from Detroit, Michigan. That's a kid. That's a fighter that we're pretty high on. And we got a lot. I mean, I don't want to just single those two out because we got so many guys. We have Eddie Gomez, who's with Golden Boy. We have Ardreal Holmes, who's with DeBella. Ivan Golub, like DeBella. We have quite a few guys with Lou DeBella. We have quite a few guys with Top Rank, like Eric DeLeon, Teofimo Lopez. And then we have. The list goes on and on. I would say the company's come a long way since I came on board. Back then, our fighters, our top fighters was Antonio Nieves, who fought for a title against the Monster in you, and we have Joseph Mack Williams, who was a national champion. He won the New York Golden Gloves 3 times, 3 weight classes, and those were like the elite of the company. And now we're getting the elite amateurs coming out. And it's not like it's when I used to make a phone. Tell you funny. Like I used to call people and I would never get called back. Now I get calls back. So it's pretty good. You know you're doing well when people call when the big promoters and boxing people are calling you back. And when they treat you nice, then you really know that you're doing well.
What do you feel about Sonny Canto's prospects as a heavyweight contender?
Sonny, I think he could go all the way, and he's going to be a big star. You have a big Italian heavyweight from South Philadelphia. He's like the real life Rocky. The only thing is, it's not like he's coming out of nowhere here. Like people know who Sonny is. He was a real good amateur. He was a silver medalist in the National Golden Glove. Has a lot of amateurs. He's a very fundamentally sound fighter. He comes from a great family. They all work together to help, and everybody in the community, they do everything they can to help Sonny as far as supporting him, making sure everything works out right for him. Because he's a good kid. Once Split T signed him, I had people that I didn't even know he knew. People I know from when I was a kid. It's like, oh, you signed a kid, Sonny Canto. He's a great kid. You're gonna love him. And when I met him, he was a great kid. And not only a great kid, he can fight. And just the upside of what can be done with him. He sells a lot of tickets and he can fight. That's a combination that's hard to come by. And there's another kid that we have, Otto Jones, who signed with Matchroom, Eddie Hearn's Matchroom. Strino, he's another kid. He doesn't, him and his father, trainer and brother, they'll fight anybody. It's just that it's our job as managers to make sure he writes the right person. But sometimes, all in one, he just get me whoever you think. I don't care. He'll fight anybody. He was one of the top amateurs in the country and one of the Olympic hopefuls, but he just wanted to turn pro, so he turned pro, and he turned pro with one of the big companies.
Now, your most known prospect on Split T is Teofimo Lopez. What?
Well, he's not a prospect anymore. He's the number one contender.
That's right. You're right. I apologize.
Number two. Well, he's the top. He's the next star of Boston.
Who would you like to see him in the ring with next?
You know what? Whoever the boss says. Whoever the boss says. That's between him. That's between David McWater. That's between Bob Arum. I know they're talking about the fight with Comey. I haven't heard anything yet. So I don't like to say anything unless things are officially announced. So I'll leave it at that. But I think he's going to be one of the biggest stars in boxing. And I've been around boxing. I've been around the Jermaine Taylors, the Paulie Malignaggi, the Andre Bertos when they were coming up, and I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a kid captivate the boxing world like this with knockouts after knockouts. I've never seen people put people out like this. And he did have a tough fight against Nakatani. That kid Nakatani surprised me. I've seen video of him; he looked good, but I didn't think he was going to be able to do that. Fight similar to the way he's fought about the fighters that he fought in Asia, and he did, and it just showed how good Teofimo is because he fought a tall fighter with a nice jab, hard right hand, and he's able to take the best and give it back and come out dominant. I don't know why people. It was a competitive fight, but I scored it 9-2. 10-2. Just a lot of close, competitive rounds, but I didn't see it that close. And then, just because it went the distance doesn't mean, it was exposed like Tim Bradley said. No, it was just he fought a kid that was good. I think that Nakatani would beat a lot of fighters in the top 10. Maybe some of them in the top five. You give everybody in the top five a tough fight because he's just so tall. He knows how to use his hand. He fights and he got a great chin.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think people undersold Nakatani going in. I mean, I didn't know much of him either, except for, the little bit of clips and highlights I saw him on YouTube. And like you were saying, a lot of people were kind of throwing Lopez underneath the bus a little bit where, he should have stopped them in 4 or 5. And not every fight you're going to knock everyone out in the first half of the fight. So if anything, I thought that he got a learning experience fighting a tall, rangy fighter like that and being able to go 12 rounds in a competitive fight and, not looking worse for wear. At least that's what I took away from the Lopez Nakatani fight.
Yeah, it showed. You know what it was? It was every fighter needs that kind of fight. Just, whether it happens then or happens later, it was good for him to have that kind of fight because he was basically bulldozing everybody. And the closer he gets to a title, when he if he fights Comey or when he fights the other guy, Lomachenko. So basically, what I was saying is, it was good that he had the experience of tougher fight than Norm, and he went 12 rounds, and he went 12 strong rounds. It wasn't like he was fading; he was strong throughout the whole 12 rounds. And just so he got all the confidence in the world. But he knows, if there was ever a fight again like that, he's able, he's strong for the whole 12 rounds. Made weight, great. He was in good, he was in good shape. So, he had the power from the first round into the 12th round. And, he finished strong. So, he knows he can do it. Every fighter wants to know am I going to react in the beginning and the end round, in the end of the fight. And he reacted very well. And I think people just they're ready, because who he is, they're ready to nitpick on every little thing. But at the end of the day, he won. He won basically 10-2 and ready to move on. We'll see what happens in the next fight, whoever that may be against.
Well, let me ask you, since you're Teofimo's manager, how do you feel Teofimo will react to that kind of unfair criticism? Do you think that in his next
manager, I work for his manager. I basically I'm in his corner. I wrap his hands.
Yeah.
And the hand wraps got to work quite amount of work that night. But supposedly he said it was fun out. His hands were fine afterwards. So I guess I did a good job. But he's always up for challenges. He's like a kid. Nothing. He's just a kid that he's ready for every and all challenges. That's the best way to describe him.
I guess my final question would be Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Alfredo Angulo. Who do you got?
You're funny. I'll say Julio doesn't make weight, but I think Julio will win. Hopefully. Oh, and you finished strong with a big question.
I had to finish strong, man. I know you're a huge Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fan that I had to finish strong.
No, actually, I did like him. He's not that bad. It's just, his work ethic, make weight. Yeah, no, but he did inherit. He did have some of the stuff his father had when he was a middleweight. He had that left hook to the body and a great chin. And he made life very scary for me when he fought Sergio Martinez in the last 2 minutes of the fight. But that was one of the most exciting 2 minutes in my boxing life. And fortunately, Sergio came out of it.
Yeah. He was Sergio was beating the shit out of him for 11 rounds, man. Like cutting his face up and everything. That was a great 12th round. I know not from your perspective, but it was a great 12th round.
It made for good drama. And boxing, you won 11 and a half rounds. So maybe, to make it exciting. he stood there and he got clipped a little bit, but it was a great fight, great event. And that's basically the climax for Sergio's career. He had he had some impressive wins, but I think that was the one that capped off where, he was top of the mountain. And that's one of the great guys of boxing, Sergio Martinez.
Well, I thank you for taking the time out of your schedule today to join us, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking with you as far as the upcoming Showbox and, the guys in split team management. And we're really looking forward and rooting for Ware this weekend. Hopefully he puts on a good performance, and we want to see Lopez back in the ring soon, no matter who it's against.
Thank you very much. Hopefully we can do it again. And I'll be tuning in, whether it's me on the telecast, on the podcast, or whoever in boxing. I was supporting. Hopefully we can do it again, and the show keeps going on and on. And next thing you know, you'll be global.
It was definitely great having Joe on board as a guest. He had a lot of good insight. He works with a lot of up-and-coming talented fighters. It was interesting to hear him talk about Teofimo and a lot of the other guys. Sonny Canto is a guy that we've talked about. I have some high hopes for him in the heavyweight division. It was really good to have Joe on board. He definitely touched on some interesting topics.
Joe's a great guy. Pretty much everyone that's involved in New York boxing, and I don't know around the world because I just live in New York, but everyone involved in New York boxing certainly knows this man. He's one of the good guys in boxing. If you're a booking agent, he'll always pay your fee. And he's just a great guy and a great manager and a Queens native. So shout out to Queens, New York.
Definitely. And Joe mentioned that he had DeAndre Ware coming up on Friday at the Showbox card going against Shishkin. We have Dmitriy Salita, who took the time to speak with me earlier in the week about this upcoming Showbox card, and as well as the sport of boxing itself. Joining us right now is Dmitriy Salita. For you guys that may not be fully aware of him, he was also a boxer before he was a promoter. Quite capable boxer, 35-2-1 was his pro record. And right now he's one of the best up-and-coming promoters in the sport. Welcome to the show, Mr. Salita.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we'll start off with the fans that may be newer to boxing that may not remember you as a fighter. You were born in Ukraine, Odessa, if I'm correct, where you had moved to the United States, and you started your boxing career off at Star Red. Explain how it was growing up in Ukraine and what got you started into boxing. Were you a fan of boxing in the Ukraine, or was it when you came to the United States?
I came to Brooklyn, New York when I was 9 years old. Growing up in Odessa, it was Soviet Union when I was growing up. Then became Ukraine a couple of months after I left. I knew of the big guys like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, Rocky IV, and stuff like that. Used to watch a lot of karate movies and kung fu movies. Joined a karate club when I was 7 years old, and then continued that when I moved to Brooklyn. My karate trainer and my older brother noticed some boxing talent in me when I was doing karate, and I tried to find out what gyms there were close to my area. And the two gyms that I knew about were Gleason's and Starrett City Boxing Club. Gleason's was too far, and Starrett City was also quite far, but Gleason was also expensive. At Starrett City was a subsidized city program, so it didn't cost any money. And I made my way to Starrett City Boxing Club, and from the first day walking to the gym, I was like a kid in a candy store, completely, mesmerized by the atmosphere, by the talented fighters that were there, and was focused on trying to be the best I could be.
Definitely. I've never actually been to the Starrett gym. I was at Gleason's a few times when I was younger. I used to go there just to spar and things like that, but I didn't have the natural talent of some other people, so I knew it wasn't going to work out too well for me if I continued. But as far as
Starrett City Boxing Club, 80s and 90s, early 2000s was one of the most dominant boxing gyms in New York City and throughout the country, and it's produced some of the best fighters in the world. Unfortunately, several years ago, it closed. The original location closed, and a new one is going to open up here in the next couple of weeks in the same area, but not the same place. But Starrett City was truly really a legendary place in the basement of Starrett City, in the basement of a garage. And we didn't have air conditioning in the summertime. We didn't have heat in the winter. We used to share water from used water gallons. Bathroom was outside. It was really, if you wanted to be a fighter and if you could take being there, it showed that you had heart and determination, and lots of great memories, lots of great fighters. Really, really special place, Starrett City.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like one of those old school gyms you see in like the movies or hear about.
Definitely.
And I imagine that, the good training at Starrett, it had to prepare you for your career. As I stated before to the fans, 35-2-1, a really solid career as a pro. Who do you think was your toughest fight as a pro?
So I just want to say that education at Starrett City Boxing Club under the guidance of Jimmy O really gave me tremendous education inside the ring and outside the ring. Really helped me understand various aspects of boxing, because Starrett City, had some of the most talented fighters in New York City in the United States. I remember, Zab used to train there before the 96 Olympics when he lost to David Diaz from Chicago. Floyd Mayweather, after the Olympics, came to visit the gym with Zab, Monty Barrett, Shannon Briggs, Travis Sims, Tarvis Sims, Louis Collazo I grew up with, Curtis Stevens, Jaden Codrington, Saddam Ali, then Danny Jacobs is a product of Starrett City Boxing Club. And the list goes on. A numerous amount of great amateur fighters, super talented that boxing fans don't know about, but that were really, really great gym fighters. So it was, and obviously boxing managers, different types of boxing personalities, trainers, hustlers, everything. So, being a kid in that, from 13 till my late 20s, being in that atmosphere, hanging out with everyone really gave me great education, obviously in the boxing ring as well as outside it. And a lot of those lessons that Starrett City Boxing Club taught me and that Jimmy O taught me are with me, now and for the rest of my life.
And then with your pro career as a fighter, how did that help you? Because right now, currently, you're one of the most up-and-coming promoters that I know of in the sport. How did the pro career help you transition to being a promoter?
Well, it helped me greatly. So first of all, I won the U.S. Nationals as an amateur, and then I won the New York Golden Gloves and got the Sugar Robinson Award for the outstanding fighter. After that, I signed with Top Rank. I signed with Bob Arum. So really, for my first professional boxing memories, I was exposed to the highest level of professional boxing. And I was, always a kid that asked a lot of questions and that looked, and I just really saw how boxing should be done in terms of big promotions, great organization, lots of different internal aspects that I was able to see as a fighter. And that really, started my education on a professional level. So I was with Top Rank for a little over 3 years. Then I signed with Lou DiBella. Different business model, different type of staff, different, just goes about his way in business in a different way. I fought for Golden Boy. I fought for Square Ring, which was kind of a break off of many of the people that used to work for Don King. And then I started to do my own thing as a fighter. I actually promoted many of my own fights. So he gave me those experiences, working with different promoters. Everybody has a different style. And as a fighter, being able, being exposed to it, really gave me a tremendous education. And great relationships, obviously, in the business that helped me until today. We just made the Wallen versus Tyson Fury fight, and I communicated with Bob Arum, so it's really full circle for me to being able to, fight on the Bob as my first promoter, and now being able to promote one of the bigger fights in heavyweight boxing is really special. So it's been quite a ride, and most important is that I love boxing. I love every aspect and side of boxing. This has really been able to help me out and help me, get through the challenges and the tougher times. Is my love for the sport of boxing and my understanding of the industry really, on a really detailed level. So, I'm happy to work every day of the week.
Definitely. On the side note, you were referring, I guess, working with Arum as far as the upcoming Wallen Fury fight. What's your take on that? Obviously, you're promoting Wallen, but do you think he has a legit shot to actually upset Fury?
Yes, I think Wallen is undefeated. He's in a great mental space. He's training very hard. The boxing fans, and you can't really blame them. They haven't seen Wallen a lot. He was supposed to fight. He was originally fought on the April 13th card in the U.S. on Showtime.
With Flores.
Yeah, no, not with Flores. April 13th, he fought a different fight, but unfortunately, that fight ended in the first round headbutt. In July, he was supposed to fight BJ Flores, but then BJ, had a medical situation, so he wasn't allowed to fight. A lot of fans didn't really have a chance to see Otto, but Otto is better than people give him credit for, and he knows his place. He knows he has everything to win, nothing to lose, and I really believe that he's going to do a great job. On Tuesday, the fight was officially announced at ESPN Studios, and Otto was there, and Tyson Fury were there, and they saw one another and communicated with one another, and I think that it gave Otto more confidence to be in that environment, to see Tyson face to face, I think that Otto's going to be ready, and it's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great fight from the first round. So, and I think that a new name in the heavyweight division is going to be born. Otto's a good fighter, and I look forward to September 14th.
Oh, definitely. Best of luck to all, and I'm really hoping for a good one myself. A lot of fans, like you said, they're unfamiliar with him. I know a little bit about him, and I think that he's better than what, like you stated, that the fans are giving him credit for, just not being familiarized, not being on United States television that much. But I think he's going to do a better job than what people are giving him credit for.
Agreed.
Yeah. Also, and since you're a promoter and this recently happened to you, it's a good question to ask. I may butcher his name a little bit, but the Nikolai Patapov kid. I don't know how bad I butchered that name.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay. He recently fought Greer. I thought, and the majority of people thought, that he had won the decision, but they gave it to Greer. Now, my question to you, being a promoter, how do these bad decisions come about, and how can boxing correct these bad decisions where the right man should win?
Yeah, I was at the fight and very surprised at the decision myself. A lot of people, actually everyone, really felt that Potapov won. Andre Ward felt that he won. Timothy Bradley felt that he won. So really, the majority, and they're ESPN commentators, so the majority of the fans, and if you look at social media and what people were commenting there in the fight, I want to say, from what I saw, 100% of the boxing fans felt that it was a big robbery. And he didn't just win by a little bit. I mean, he outclassed him the whole fight, and the fact that this happened on national television, where did it happen, is really, it's really sad. Nikolai came here all the way from another country just a couple of days before the fight and really put forth a great fight. But he's going to be back on TV. He's going to be back on ESPN before the end of the year. So boxing fans can check him out. There's why does stuff like this happen? I really don't have an answer for it. I guess boxing skills at times is at the eye of the beholder, and different people interpret the fights in different ways. But I don't know what fight the judges were watching. I think there should be some type of a system where it's something like this, where the judges can review the fight, and when you file a protest with the commission, that the judges would review the fight and score again. And I think there maybe have to be some type of a reference of numbers of punches thrown, numbers of punches landed, that can balance out the judge's decision. I don't know exactly how to do it in a scientific really way, because sometimes the guy that lands more punches is not really always the winner, because sometimes the guy that doesn't land as many punches are kind of has ring presence and lands more power shots. But it really would take some planning to really form a system that would avoid such stuff. And I think the sport is heading in such a great direction. I think this is the healthiest that boxing has ever been. There's ESPN, there's Showtime, there's Fox, there's DAZN. UFC is getting into the boxing business now. So combat sports and boxing is the healthiest it's ever been. And mainstream sports fans are tuning in to watch boxing. And you can see it by having big networks like ESPN and DAZN investing so much money into the sport of boxing. So I think that there has to be systems put into place where the fighters can be protected and the fans can be protected, because really it's all about the fans. It's all about the fans enjoying the sport of boxing and seeing good decisions. So hopefully, great minds. There are some great minds in boxing can come together and figure out a fair way where fights can go the way they're supposed to.
I agree. Because like you said, the fans can only take so much of bad decisions before they turn away from the sport or watch the sport less. And it just affects the whole sport when, how many times have you watched the Super Bowl where the final score is on a 35-28 and the team that scored 28 wins? It doesn't have any sport where the person that wins actually loses.
I do want to say that even though we won a bad side of a decision this time around, the sport overall is getting better, and there's less and less these type of decisions. There's less and less quote unquote, hometown favorite type of decisions. I think it's getting much better, and it's great because boxing fans have a platform to speak out about it. When fights happen on whatever network they happen on, boxing fans can talk about the fight and the decision, on the social media of that network. They can send emails. So I think communication and access is a lot better than it's ever been, which is great for the sport of boxing. It's great that the fans can truly, express themselves, and I think that those voices will be heard.
Definitely. I know you have an upcoming show next weekend, and I don't want to butcher the name, but I'll say Agershiv.
You butchered it a little bit, man. The Potapov was good, but this one is not so good. Shokshakan Ergashev. I think one of the bigger punchers in boxing, one of the bigger punchers in the junior welterweight division. He trained the last 6 weeks training in Detroit at the Kronk Boxing Gym. Has had a great camp. Next week they're gonna wind it down, but I look forward to a impressive performance for him on Showbox. And in the main event of that show, Vladimir Shishkin, who I believe is one of the best prospects coming out of Russia, one of the best super middleweight prospects, is fighting DeAndre Ware. That is going to be a great main event on Showbox. Really highly competitive fight. Opening fight of that show is going to be Arnold Hagai, who's a world-rated super middleweight, fighting Vladimir Tikhonov, who was a world-rated super bantamweight. He fought on Showbox before, and he lost, but now I think he's going to come strong and try to redeem himself. So we have 3 great fights on August 23rd at Showtime that boxing fans should definitely check out.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the card because a lot of those guys I'm not fully familiar with, but I know of them through Boxrec or reading articles, things like that. So I'm really interested in that card. I think all fans should definitely check out that fight card.
I do want to say that Showbox has been such a great platform for boxing fans and for boxers because it's really open to everyone, and a lot of great fighters from different promotional companies and in different places, different countries have a chance to be seen. And I think there's nothing like that in the boxing community because all the big networks are kind of aligned with this guy, with that guy, and exclusive. So other talented fighters don't have a chance to showcase themselves. They almost always have to come in as the B-side, as the opponent, which is really sad. But Showbox has been one of the best growing platforms of top talent, for forever. And I think it's so important with ESPN Friday Night Fights being gone because it was a similar type of platform. I think that this is so important for the sport of boxing that shows like Showbox are in existence and give young fighters and young talents that may not be affiliated with a promoter that has an exclusive deal with one of these networks, a platform, an opportunity to fight on TV, and for boxing fans to be able to connect with them, especially in the growing stages of their careers.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it reminds me of ESPN and going back further. USA Tuesday night fights and Thursday when they kind of switch that around. But when the USA Network used to show boxing, it reminds me of that where there really wasn't an A side. It was just, 2 guys coming and squaring off to see who's the better man and, good publicity for these new fighters coming up.
Right. Yeah, Tuesday night fights. I remember Tuesday night fights. Started boxing in 1995 at Star City Boxing Club, and Tuesday night would rush home to watch some great boxing. Oh, it's fantastic series, and too bad it's gone. But that was one of the greatest fight series that I've seen in the last 20 years or so.
And my last question for you, I know you're pressed for time today, so my last question that I want to get into is recently in an interview, Jarrell Miller, on his promoter, being you, said, I think I want to be with a promoter that's not only about the fight, but ethically is just a good person, unquote. And after his whole debacle with Joshua and the lead up and him saying he didn't fail the test, never took anything, and then it comes out that he did, and now making this statement, which seems really contradictory from what he did to saying someone else is unethical. I just wanted to get your take on that and how, I mean, are you still working with him? How do you feel about the situation? Things like that.
I'm pretty saddened on a personal level that Jarrell would say stuff like this. I've been with Jarrell since his Jarrell's fought on my show since his second professional fight. Always felt that Jarrell was one of the most talented heavyweights around. And when I used to promote my own events, my own shows, I still didn't have the infrastructure of a company, so I couldn't sign him because I wouldn't do a service to him. But I wanted him to stay busy. So I would just put him on my events. And I was so surprised that the bigger promoters in town wouldn't sign this guy who's from Brooklyn, who's a heavyweight and who's so talented and had such a gifted gap. But then time went on, and I developed an infrastructure, and Jarrell asked for me to sign him, and I did. And then, we entered into a new deal about 2 years ago where Jarrell wanted certain terms, and I agreed to them. And so I'm very surprised, to hear him say this stuff after we've been living under the deal that he wanted to, that he wanted. So, it is what it is. It's you just got to roll with the punches and keep on going. And as they say, the truth will set you free. So I believe in the truth, and I believe that it'll set us free. But what can I say? It is what it is, and we'll live to see another day. And I still believe that Jarrell is the best heavyweight in the world, definitely the best American heavyweight in the world. And I feel that if he's able to put all the other stuff behind him and get back in the ring, it's going to create a lot of excitement in the heavyweight division. But he is on the contract to me, and GCP, Greco Promotions, is my co-promoter. So we're working on everything with that situation.
All right, well, a lot of people are looking forward to him hopefully being back in the ring. Just, like you said, we'll just see with who as a promoter, hopefully with you still, or, in the way of boxing, things, look at the Canelo thing, for instance, who knows what's going on there. So I guess it happens in the sport.
Things happen in the sport all the time. Obviously, there are so many different energies and so many different forces and different relationships. Hopefully Jarrell can get back to the ring soon and keep doing what he does and show his magic. But he is under contract to Salita Promotions, and that is a fact. And hopefully we'll be able to resolve our issues in the near future.
All right, definitely. Is there anything that you want to plug on the way out? I know you have the upcoming show on the 23rd, but anything else you want to plug as far as upcoming fighters, other shows, other business adventures you have going on?
Sure. So we have several events coming up. Obviously, August 23rd on Showbox with Vladimir Shishkin versus DeAndre Ware. Then August 14th, Tyson Fury versus Otto Wallin. September 19th, we have a big night of boxing in Moscow where 3 of our fighters are going to fight. Umar Salimov, top 5 rated light heavyweight. Abdi Daftaev, who's an undefeated heavyweight, 17-0 with 16 knockouts, on his way to make a lot of noise. And Aslan Bekidigov, who is the IBF and WBO European champion, super middleweight. All 3 guys very excited about. They're going to make a lot of noise. October 5th is Clarissa Shields versus Ivana Habazin for the WBO junior middleweight world title. This is going to be Clarissa's 3rd division title. She's going to attempt to do it faster than anyone in the history of the sport, including Vasily Lomachenko. So that's going to be a big night of boxing. We're going to announce a very exciting undercard, televised undercard, for that show and non-televised undercard. With the non-televised undercard, we just want to showcase the rich talent of Michigan and of Detroit, Michigan produced some of the greatest fighters in our sport, and that show, to a large extent, will reflect that. That'll be the theme of our event. So I look forward to these events, and thank you so much for having me on, and I look forward to coming back and talking it out once again.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for joining us and taking time out of your busy day. You're more than welcome back anytime you want to come on, or if you have any fighters that you want to come on and interview, put the word out, then, we'll take anybody they have. And it's been a pleasure having you on, sir.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Definitely two great guests for this week between Salita and Joe. To have two guys, oddly enough, it just worked out that way, that both manage a guy that's going to be the main event of an upcoming fight.
I mean, it should actually be a really good fight. Fantastic card. We worked very hard to get both of these men on our podcast, and it was an absolute honor to interview and hear their take on the boxing world and various things in boxing.
Yeah, definitely. That main event's very interesting. Ware is coming off a nice win against Ronald Ellis. I believe that Ellis is maybe actually supposed to face Kid Chocolate now. He's supposed to step in for Truax, and he's going to fight Kid Chocolate. That's a whole nother thing. But DeAndre Ware is a pretty nice fighter. He's coming off that big Ellis win. Shishkin, I don't know a ton about. I've seen a little bit of video on him. He has a couple of good, solid wins, though. But it seems like nice matchmaking. Shishkin being 8-0 and Ware having a pretty nice record of his own at 13-1. It's a good, whoever wins is definitely going to step up and go in the right direction, maybe even towards the top 10.
I mean, I think obviously Salita is very high on Shishkin, because you don't put a fighter with 8 fights in against someone like DeAndre Ware unless you are very, very high on him. DeAndre Ware is a very durable fighter. He has that win over Ellis, and I believe he's beaten a couple of undefeated fighters, actually. Now, DeAndre Ware has, excuse me, but he has a lot of fights that have been very difficult. He hasn't been matched lightly, and neither has Shishkin, actually, if you look at him. So this is two fighters that have not taken the easy route at all, and it's going to be a very, very good main event. Shout out to Salita, shout out to Split Team Management for putting this together, and I definitely look forward to watching it.
Definitely. I think Shishkin's going to have a sizable height advantage. I don't know how accurate BoxRec is with it, but he's going to be about 4 or 5 inches taller than Ware. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that weighing-wise to see if that actually looks like the actual advantage height-wise, because that's going to be pretty sizable, 4 or 5 inches.
Well, I believe Ellis is also a very tall fighter, and I believe he had the massive height advantage over Ware as well. And Ware beat him. So, I mean, like you said, we'll see. Salita has to be very, very confident in him. And I'm excited to see those kind of fights. I'm excited to see promoters who are confident in their fighters and will put their fighters in tough fucking fights like this, because it's good for fans too. A lot of fans complain over the easy matching for prospects, and it's refreshing to see that these two guys are fighting each other.
Definitely. It's an interesting card as far as prospects go. Jaron Ennis is making his comeback on this card after his promotional issues. I don't think he's going to make the TV portion, but I hope we see some highlights of him for people that aren't really familiar with Ennis. He's a really, really good prospect. I think he's one of the top 5 prospects right now in boxing. He has a decent opponent, Franklin Mumani, 23-5-1. I don't know much on him, but record-wise, he doesn't look bad for a late opponent for this card. And also on the undercard, which they will be showing, I'll just call him Shohao because it just sounds better because I can't pronounce his name, even though Salita went over with me. He's going to be on the card, and he's really good, I think. Super lightweight, 16-0, 14 knockouts. He's one to keep an eye on. And I'll just call him Shoho because it's a lot easier for me to pronounce that than his name. But he has some really quality wins. Sonny Fredrickson, he stopped in the 3rd round, and he's just coming off a UD against Mikhail Fox, which is impressive because Mikhail Fox is pretty big for that weight division. I think he's almost 6'4". So already he's shown that he can face some tall guys, some talented fighters in Fredrickson. So he's definitely one to keep an eye out for on Friday night. But definitely catch out, watch that card Friday night. It's a good triple header. A lot of prospects on the card. So that concludes this week's episode. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Special guests. We're in the works to get another guest or two on for next week. Until then, take care, everybody.
Take care, guys.